Yeah, you made that sound very grandiose. Thank you. As some of you know, I am Andy Byers. I'm the Director of Publishing Technology now. And before that, I was Senior Publishing Technologies Developer. I did found Janeway, perhaps a mistake. Now we're all here in this room as a result. So I'm going to be doing a quick talk. We're going to have a look. Look at the slides work on this thing. There we go. We're going to have a look back, and we're going to talk about moving forward as well. So looking back over the last sort of year and a bit, we've released 4 new versions of Janeway. We've closed 274 pull requests, which is quite a lot. Increased the number of servers we have around the world from 6 to 9, and it's actually 10 now since I wrote these slides because we set one up not long ago. And we're increasing our team from 3 to 5. We're also going to be we're also going to work very closely with Catherine here, who's the Publishing Development Officer, provides a lot of sort of project management work around the tech side as well. So it's nice to have her on the team too. So over the course of the year, we've been working on realigning Janeway's web presence. It's one of the big projects we've been doing. We're kind of spread quite thin over different platforms. We're using Trello and all sorts of different things. We've started pulling that in. So the primary area for development now is GitHub. Our public roadmap is all on there. And yeah, we've sort of been consolidating that. And part of that as well is redeveloping the Janeway website because it's not very good. So we're doing a lot of work on that. And one of the things that Catherine and Joe have been working on that we're really excited about is they've undertaken some UX interviews around the copy editing workflow. We're going to keep pushing ahead with that and hopefully come up with some an actionable workflow we can build. So we're going to be looking at that next year as well, which is really exciting. Well, I'm going to hand over to Mauro. He's going to have a chat with us about some things that we've done.
Oh, thanks. Hi, everyone. It's sidekick time. Okay, so a lot has happened over the last year, of course, and we won't list all of the different features that we've developed for Janeway because we will be here forever, to be honest. Now, I wanted to go first with our largest piece of work, which none of you has probably seen, which is that we upgraded from Django 1.11 all the way to 3.2. This is a mission we started in 2021, and we failed multiple times at doing. It's one of those things that if you leave it for very long, it becomes almost impossible to manage at some point. One of the blockers we had, yeah, it's not as bad as that, thankfully, but yeah, so Django 1.11 is really outdated by now, and we should have done this probably in 2021 when we could. When it was late 2022 when we did it in the end. The main blocker was that some of the libraries that we use were not ready for that transition, so we had to migrate a lot of code to other libraries that were able to use the new version of Django. Yeah, it took a while, but as a result, now we are on the mainline version of Django, and it shouldn't take us as much time to move on to 3.2 later on, which is the new, sorry, 4.2, which is the new long-term release. It was challenging, but we did it. So yeah, well done us. And as I said, it's something that you probably don't notice using the software because it's something that goes under the hood in the code base. But it's really important for us to be able to keep using newer and newer libraries and be able to develop new features. So yeah, we did it. Highlighting some of the features that we've worked on recently, one of the big ones was full text searching. Is something that people have been asking for a long time. We had a very basic searching solution at the beginning, which was basically doing string matching on the metadata. So for example, if you search for titles, you search for a word, we match it on the title, here's the article. But of course, everyone wanted to have full text searching on the PDFs, on the XML, on the HTML. So this was a huge undertaking, and we had to make a decision about the technology. There was a big push for using technologies such as Elasticsearch and Solr, and those are really advanced and they have really amazing features for searching, but they require having an extra service. And one of our missions with Janeway is to make sure that the technology is easy to use and doesn't require lots of tinkering to get it running. So we were already using Postgres at the time. It's a database system that allows for full text searching. So we thought if everyone's running Postgres already, why don't we use these amazing features with Django so that no one has to actually do anything to have full text search. So we implemented a system that allows us to basically vectorize all of the content of your PDF files when they get uploaded, and they get loaded into the database. And then when you do the same search as before, instead of just searching the metadata, we can also search all of the PDFs, the HTML, the XML, And then, of course, there was another challenge. Someone decided to use MySQL, someone in this room, in fact, for their database. And then, of course, none of these features would work for them. So we had to implement a solution that worked for MySQL. I'm not going to say which database is better, but one was easier to implement for sure. And now we have to maintain two variants of this full text search system that we initially wanted to only maintain for one. But it's there now. Another interesting thing is at the moment we released this feature, of course, there were more questions. For example, I remember seeing this issue immediately after doing the release. Can we please have advanced search features? Can we have wildcards? Can we have fuzzy searching? Can we have? So just to say, we're working on those, and this time we have backup. We have the guys at CISA Media Lab helping us with this. They already have a solution plan that they're implementing for Postgres. So someone else will have, again, to make it work for MySQL, for our other friends who prefer the dolphin instead of the elephant. But yes, we definitely will keep support for MySQL because we know it's important for the open source community, and we know that many people have committed resources to MySQL, so it's important we keep it up. On the previous slide, just an interesting thing. There is a search ORCID button that we're removing. It doesn't make any sense, right? If you type it in an ORCID, it should search for it automatically. You shouldn't need to tick that box. So it's the kind of thing that you have on a V1.0 release, but yeah, hopefully it will go away soon. Another big feature, and this one came from Andy, was to make it possible to have multiple repositories running on the same press. So it's basically a multi-tenant system for repositories. So now it's possible to have multiple of them running on the same Janeway installation, which means authentication is so much easier because you have one single database where all your users are, and then they can submit preprints to either of the repositories. And thanks to this, we now have Earth Archive as well as Evo Archive running on Janeway. So that's another exciting milestone for us on the preprint side this time. Of course, yes. Yeah, not hosted by us. It's our partner in crime in the preprint side. And then on another front is the usability and the user experience. So as you guys know, we hired Joe recently, and Joe has a very keen eye for UX, UI side of things. It's something that Andy and I have been coping with, but maybe we're not in the best position for. So we're very grateful to have someone who is really into it and has a really keen eye to find these things. An example of this is a very recent feature that we released where we overhauled the visibility controls on the peer review system. We know that it was a bit difficult to understand which part of the peer review is going to be visible by the author, which one's visible by the editor. So we added all of these controls, so it's a bit easier to then know exactly what's possible to see from either side. And it was the first time that we had input from Joe on the design side, and I think it helped a lot. So I'm very grateful that we did. And as Andy mentioned before, exactly, yeah, we had a few iterations over it, thanks to all of that amazing feedback, and we ended up with, I think, a really good. We got really good feedback about it as well when we released it, so it's quite nice. And yeah, so on the front of the UX UI, Andy mentioned already that we conducted this experiment about the copy editing process. So we're going to have an overhaul of that section of Janeway. We know it's a bit dubious at the moment. We never changed it. We just released the very first version that we had, right? And we made very little changes to it. And that's something that Joe also conducted with help from Catherine. They did this amazing work of interviewing lots of people to find out what's actually needed, what are the problems with the current interface. So hopefully you will see much more of that moving forward, because we know it's something that it's very important to you and also very visible to you, as opposed to, for example, the backend work that we do when operating Django and so on. And then a few other features that we've worked on. I didn't want to miss on the plugins. We have this really cool plugin called the typesetting plugin, which we designed to make the whole production process a bit easier. At the beginning, we had something called production and proofing, and it was very difficult to move an article between the two of them. So if it went to proofing, how do I go back to production? It was a bit of a mess. So we have this new plugin that we developed already a couple of years ago, I think, and it's got lots of features coming in this year. And as a result of that, we're going to merge it into core. So that's going to be the default workflow for Janeway, and hopefully we'll make the whole workflow much simpler, because there will be one less stage, and this new stage is quite easy to work with, I think.
We iterated on that a lot. We built it as a plugin so that we could take feedback really quickly, develop changes, and deploy it immediately. So we weren't waiting for releases of the core. So,
yeah, that's the beauty of the plugins, that we can. Yeah.
We're going to merge it before I get rid of the other two older pages.
Yeah. And then on the transporter side, we call the transporter all of the plugins that we use for exporting content out. Those who like Star Trek might get the reference there. So we had one called the Dodge transporter, which was the very first transporter we wrote. And that one went quite well. I think people like it. The interface is quite nice. So now we have a production transporter that allows you to export any content from Janeway to any other site using FTP. And then another one that uses FTP, but is very specific, is the Library of Congress transporter for those in the US that have commitments with the Library of Congress to upload their files. It does the same thing as the other one, but it's exactly the file structure that you need for the Library of Congress. So that's a big milestone for us as well. As a result of having these two plugins as well, we now have a package called Janeway FTP. So if you want to develop your own FTP integration with another service that we don't have in this list at the moment, it's quite easy to do it now. You just get a basic plugin, load our FTP packaging, and then you just have to define what the structure you need for your service. And the other older non-transporter export plugins like Portico, for example, and back content have received updates, but they're not on the same level of polish as the transported plugins. So that's going to come at some point as well. And another big one for us was when we migrated the University of Kent into Janeway from OJS 3. They had this interesting combination where they have multi-tenancy, so they have multiple journals in the same system, but they wanted to have some journals with domains and others as a path of the press, and that's something we didn't support in Janeway because we never had that use case. So now it's possible to have journals with their own custom domain for branding purposes or because they don't want to be linked to the press for some reason, and then other journals can use the path mode. So that was a big one for us. It required a bit of a refactor, but it was not that difficult to implement, to be honest. OAI PMH is one that was on the back burner for a while. We had a very basic feed that didn't cover the whole specification of OAI PMH, and now, thankfully, we do cover the whole specification, at least for OAI DC, and we also support the apps as well for journals. And thanks to our friends at CDL, the repository system has an OAI feed as well, so that's brilliant to see the open source power coming to fruition. We have a new sitemap generation system that is much faster than before. And this is important for those of you who have lots of journals on their installation. You probably notice slowdowns at 3 a.m. in the morning and 6 a.m. in the morning, 9 a.m. in the morning, because that's when the sitemaps were being generated for Google Scholar more than anything, and that would take a long time. So now we have a much faster sitemap generation that uses async under the hood, so it doesn't block users from browsing the content while this process is happening. And also we have a new user role, which we are calling the journal manager. In Janeway at the beginning, we decided the editor should have a lot of power to make their life easier. But then we find as we get more users into Janeway that there are lots of use cases where you don't want this, right? For example, should an editor be managing the password for Crossref? Probably not in most cases. So yes, we backtracked on that, and we have now a journal manager role. And what we did with this role is that it's customizable, so you can control what the editor can do and what the journal manager can do on the settings side. We want to expand this to the whole system, but for now, you can control which settings are available to each of them. And this is something you normally do at the setup phase, and then you don't have to worry about anymore. And yes, hopefully later on we will make this available to all the roles, which will make the system quite a bit more configurable, so you can control what, for example, the reviewers can do and so on. But we don't want to get into a settings mess where to use Janeway you have to this amazing and big panel where you have to control all of these different settings. We want the defaults to be very same so that you only have to tweak those little things that you need. So we're taking a bit more time into the other rows because we're not quite sure yet what should be controlled by everyone by default. Yep, I'll hand over to Andy to move on to the future stuff. We've seen all of the stuff we've done this year, and now it has to be
Yeah, so thanks to all the contributors as well. It's really exciting to see more people contributing to Janeway on the open source side. So we're going to list some of those folks who've done some. Justin did a couple of PRs, I believe. Your name's on the list there, which is nice. Personally, I'd like to thank Mauro and Joe, the members of the core team, without whom we wouldn't be here today. I'd probably be in an asylum. So looking forward, this is the new structure of the team. Catherine asked if she could be part of the team, or we asked Catherine if she'd like to be part of the team. So Catherine works sort of cross OLH. So she works with editorial and the directors and with the tech team. doing bits and pieces. I'm obviously the Director of Publishing Technology, you know me. Mentioned earlier on, we've just hired a Publishing Technologies librarian. I asked Siobhan if we had permission to add her to the team slides. She'll be joining us in October. She's coming from Leeds, where she's an acquisitions editor at the moment in the library. Not an acquisitions editor, an acquisitions librarian. She has previously worked on Janeway. She was a press assistant at the University of Huddersfield Press, one of the first people ever to use Janeway outside of OLH. So she has a lot of experience and should hit the ground running. She's going to take control of documentation as sort of the initial part of her work, and sort of unify the voice of documentation as well. So instead of having random documents written by different people, we'll have a unified voice, which will be really exciting to see. I mentioned earlier on that we were working on our web presence. So I'm just going to go quickly a little bit over that. So we're working on a Janeway website rebrand, but we're hoping that will be quite helpful in bringing some more customers in. A lot of feedback we had on that website was that it was rubbish, and that's true, and we openly admit that inside. We built the current website as sort of a placeholder about 5 years ago, and then it never went away, so it's still there now. So we're really excited to be working on that. The other areas are around GitHub. So we're now doing a lot more of our project management in GitHub. We've moved away from Trello, which we were using before for sort of development stuff. And our public roadmap is on there as well. And I'll show you a little bit of that later on as well. So we also have Freshdesk, and you can't see it, but Discord's at the bottom there. Can I make it do? Where is it? Is it on the left? Maybe it's just going to stay forever. Oh well. Pardon me. I am also recovering from COVID. I'm testing negative, but I'm still feeling a bit chesty, so unfortunately I will be coughing as we go along. So a lot of you will have seen the sort of Janeway design stuff appearing in different places, our new logo, for example, and the program, which we had some amazing feedback on. One or two people commenting it's the best program for a conference I've ever seen, which is nice. We fed that back to our designer, Carly Murphy, who was very excited to hear. She mentioned to us that often when she's finished a design project, it then gets butchered. But when they implement, because she doesn't do the implementation, so the implementation is often not how she'd like it to be. And we got the opposite feedback of that. She's very happy with what we're doing with the content that she's bringing to us. So this project will be starting probably towards the end of October, I think, is when we're going to be starting doing the Janeway site. Yeah, we're very grateful to people who helped us think about what the site needed to be, what information needed to have, what's the structure and the content, and we're grateful to Catherine and Joe for doing those interviews. We're also working on the OLH site. This is underway at the moment. We recently heard from Martin Eve that this site is also in Google search results, so we'll be dealing with that soon. So if anyone wants to try and find it, you probably can. So this work is underway now at the moment. We're looking for a launch pretty soon, I think. Joe's working away on this, and we're all really excited to see it come to fruition very soon. I'm going to talk a bit about development. One of the core objective of the technical team is to build software that empowers our users. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process, because it has been opaque in the past, and that's some sort of feedback we've had from people. They know we're working away on stuff, but they don't know what we're working on. That's your Mauro's profile storage space is cool. And they don't really know, what we're working on, when we're working on it, and when it's going to get released, and any of that stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about the process, try and shed some light on it for you. We'll see how this goes. This is our new development cycle. We're starting this after 1.5.1 finishes, because 1.5.1 has been an absolute nightmare. It just seems to never die, just like 1.5 never seemed to die. This is the process from now on. It follows this pattern: planning, implementation, review, deployment, retrospective. And it's sort of Scrum-like. It's not Scrum, it's Scrum-like. It's our own sort of internal version of Agile. Each cycle will be 12 weeks, 10 weeks of development, 2 weeks for retrospective and deployment. And we're going to be sticking to that any issues that don't get dealt with within the 12 weeks are going to be jetted into the next release. We're not going to delay a release. We're just going to move it into the next one. So the idea is there'll be 4 regular releases of Janeway each year that you'll be able to hopefully count on, and have a sort of idea of when those things are coming out. And in between those times, we'll be using more of the tools that we've built subsequently to deploy changes that we can. So we have a liquid XSLT plugin that allows us to deploy changes to XSLT as we go along. So we're going to be using those more often as well, to get those changes up for people. I think that's for Michigan. That's specifically for Patrick right there. So each cycle involves various meetings, sort of handle the work that's going on. So it starts with planning, where we do backlog refinement, and issue selections. That's where we decide, what priority issues have, how long they're going to take, and which ones we're going to work on. Implementation is where we actually do work. We do coding. Not to say the other stuff doesn't work, but we actually physically writing code. That involves a daily stand-up where the team get together every day and we talk about what we've worked on, what we're going to be working on, and help each other through any issues that we're having. Review. So I know you guys are used to sort of the idea of peer review. Think of peer review, but more brutal. You've got code review. That's where the engineers look at each other's code and we tell each other why we're bad. But we don't. We're very nice people, really. So deployment is the next one. That's where we will have a planning meeting for how we're going to deploy. If there's any massive changes, we communicate those in advance. Is the site going to be down for a long period of time, or is it going to be a quick one? That's where we decide how that's all going to work. And then the retrospect is where we get together to just discuss what went wrong and to try and work out how we can avoid doing it in the future. So the 151 retrospective will essentially be this sprint went on far too long. Let's not do that again. And hopefully we've got a resolution for that. That's our hope anyway. So as I said earlier on, we plan to make a release every quarter, starting in 2023. That's our hope. We got a 12-week cycle, 10 for development, 2 for packaging, and planning for the next one. All cards will pass their triage board, which we set up, and more on that later on. Basically, what will happen is new cards come in and they get a priority and shirt size assigned to them. We might look for assistance on prioritization. If there are issues that are important to the community, we might ask, is this something you want us to work on? Is it a big deal, or is it less of a priority for people out there? But ultimately, the team will make the decision on which issues we work on, taking into account the sort of larger ecosystem, not just the sort of commercial partners, but also the open source partners as well. We put a rather conservative estimate of 80 days worth of work in one sprint. So that takes into account currently 3 developers very soon. So it might bump up a little bit, but we're taking into account leave, sickness, and a lot the business as usual work we have to get on with. So that's what we're going with now, and we'll be monitoring that through the first sprint to see if we get that estimation right. Fingers crossed. So cards will be assigned to cycles based on their priority. Cards added into a sprint, maybe added into a sprint if there's additional time. So if we complete the work that we add in the sprint and there's time left over, the next highest priority card will be taken into that sprint. It will never happen, but that is a possibility. It's more likely at the end of the sprint, any cards that are left over will be shunted to the next one. Let's say we're going to monitor this with 151 and 1.6, and hopefully we'll have some success there. So how do we manage the cycle? We do it all on GitHub now. You can go onto GitHub and you can see there's a link for the roadmap there. I've made some short links, links.janeway.system/roadmap, and that takes you to this one up here, where you can see there's a welcome. You can't see it on the screen there because it's terrible. There's a welcome column, and then there's a card for each of the upcoming sprints that we're working on, whichever sprints are in progress, and then links to the completed sprints as well. You can click through onto this card, and it'll take you through into a project board where you can see the issues that are queued up, which ones are in progress and such. And then at the bottom here, we've also got the development timeline, which is new. A lot of you won't have seen this yet, but we had it originally in Google Docs, but finally GitHub. You can't see it on the screen here, unfortunately, because of this annoying banner. But there is a timeline there, I swear to God. And it shows sort of a Gantt chart for the release schedule. We'll be updating that to sort of match the new sprint cycle. And you can get that one at links.janeway.system/timeline as well. And just to be clear, The development timeline dates are estimated, just in case anyone thinks they're in stone. But we're hoping that it'll be a lot better in 2023. So yeah, so before any of that happens, we now have the new triage board, which I mentioned earlier on. So any new issue that anyone opens in GitHub for us will appear in this board. And we have new, backlog, dev ready, and done. Cards will move along from left to right. The team will, in a backlog refinement meeting, take the cards from the top, assign a shirt size based on an estimate of how long it will take, assign a priority based on feedback we've got from people, and we might at that point say, post out on Discord, we're actually struggling with a priority for this issue. We're not really sure how the community feels. Can you go ahead and give us a vote? We'll just do thumbs up, thumbs downs on GitHub or something like that, and then we can assign a priority to it. It then moves into the backlog, and then can be assigned to a sprint from there, and it'll move across. It'll move from new to dev ready if we have a priority set for it, and a shirt size set for it. It may go into the backlog if it's something we're asking for feedback. When cards get completed, it'll automatically move into the done column. That's an automated process within GitHub. But in between that, when they're in the dev ready column, they then get assigned to a sprint. Let me double check my notes here. Yeah, so the other thing to bear in mind is that we're also taking a slightly different approach to how we deal with issues on GitHub. There is the possibility that you might submit something and we'll mark it as something we're not going to work on. That is a possibility. We're also going through the backlog. We've got tickets in there from 2017 that are just never going to see the light of day. We just don't have the resource to do it. They're very interesting pieces of work, but it's just not possible. So we're marking some as this is not something we intend to ever work on, and we're marking some of them as we might come back and look at this one in the future if we get the time. And you'll see the tags being assigned to some of those issues. And we're doing that to give you a bit of transparency about whether these things are ever going to get done. So, I mean, you've probably seen it because we started doing it a couple of months ago, actually, didn't we? We did a couple. For the most part, I think we thought these are all fine and they'll stay in the queue, but there were some that were very niche, and there were lots that we'd already done as well, which was quite interesting. We found a lot of issues that have been sort of duplicated, and that we were able to close those and bring the number down. But that's the hope, is we can have a sort of sensible backlog of issues that we know we can get on with, and your guys aren't like waiting for us to work on an issue that's just never going to get done. I mean, for the most part, I think, as I say, we're pretty happy with most of the issues that come in. They're pretty reasonable and things that we can deal with. But some of them are just a little bit left field that we just are like, no, that's just not something we're going to be looking at in the immediate term. And then once the cards are going through triage, they get assigned to a sprint, and then we have a sprint board. And these are all publicly accessible. You can see what we're actively working on. Cards move from left to right, from to do, in progress, PR submitted. I can't read that actually. Reviewed, I think it says, and then done. So you can see cards moving along as we're working on them. You can open up the cards to see more information about what's being worked on, and you can also subscribe to them. So if a card is of interest to you, you want to know when it's finished or going to be released, you can go in and you can subscribe, and you get a notification when the status of that card changes as well as it moves across. So we use lists and Kanban views to sort of visualize this process, and you can go in and see them all. Okay, so first step in the release process is we create a release candidate. Some of you have heard of release candidates because we did quite a few of them for the last release. There was about 8 or 9. So we create a release candidate. Those are tagged RC. So you'll have like 1.5.1 RC1, the first release candidate for version 1.5.1. And then we deploy these to our early adopters, who tend to be everyone. Almost everyone wants to be on the release candidate deployment at the moment. So we deploy those, and then we gather feedback on the changes we've made. It can take a few release candidates before we get a sort of stable version that we can then tag up. And lastly, we're introducing for 1.5.1 the podcast. So it'd be a video podcast where myself, Joe, Mauro, and Catherine will sit down, and we're going to walk you through some of the changes we've made in 1.5.1. We'll record a video where we'll just walk you through the actual changes. So, going through completed issues, bug fixes, new features, enhancements, and showing those off. So there's a visual aspect to it, because we know the changelog is really boring and nobody really wants to read, 100 PR issue log. So we'll pick some of the highlights and we'll go through those. and we'll fix some of the bug fixes, and we'll walk you through those changes as well. We're doing it as an experiment. We'll see how it goes. If no one watches it, we won't do it ever again. But I think, you know, a fair number of people are interested in having that, you know, that shown off. You know, to be able to see the features and how they work is quite helpful. You know, there's a bunch of features that a lot of people don't even know about. You know, half the journals, more than half the journals, don't have the publication notification system enabled. You know, it exists, but you know, most people don't know about it. So it's that kind of thing where we can sit and we can say, this is the new feature, publication notifications, this is how you enable them, this is how you customize your template, this is what happens when a new article is published, who receives the notification, how do people sign up for them, that sort of thing. So we can walk you through those changes. So we're going to be doing that as well. I'm quite excited about that. As mentioned a bit earlier on, but I just want to say, you know, this is where we're going. You know, our long-term goal is to position Janeway as an all-service platform for library publishers and, you know, scholarly organizations as well. So our sort of growth areas are around the repository platform. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on that to move it beyond sort of post and preprints. We're going to be working with Iowa State to develop an organizational structure system within it, which is really exciting. We're going to be starting that pretty soon. And also in books as well. So we want to have submission and review within the books platform too, so that you can do editorial review and external peer review of books within Janeway and then publish them directly within the platform too. Because we have quite a lot of people using the books plugin, and it's essentially a metadata repository where you just fire your metadata in and the books appear. And then we'll be doing some stuff on the back end there for Onyx exports and OAI feeds as well for the books. And one thing we want to say is that we're going to remain open source. We're going to remain not-for-profit, always. Nobody can buy us. We're a charity by royal charter, so we're not going anywhere. And our code has no actual value because it's under the AGPL license. So there's no monetary value there, even if Birkbeck tried to sell it, which they couldn't. So how are we going to do this? We're going to expand the tech team. We're going to expand the repository platform. And the font is getting smaller as we go down. We're going to redevelop the copy editing workflow. One of the outcomes from the UX research we kind of have is that there's two thought processes around how copy editing can work. And so we're discussing whether we build both of them and how we can build both of them. So that's going to be really interesting. We're hoping to publish a paper about it, right? We kind of have a little one already. Yeah, but I think when we're published, like, these are the general ideas that came out of this work, if we ever get the chance to do it. We're going to redevelop our internal file system, which Mauro's very excited about. He's very excited about that. He's also very excited about the replicator. So another Star Trek reference there. We're going to be building an automation tool that allows us to automate a lot of the processes that we do manually at the moment. So deploying new installs, collecting information from new presses. So we'll be able to essentially send a link out to a press manager that says, you know, give us all your journal information, you know, fill this form out, and it will create a Janeway instance for them right away for them to then get access to and start playing with. So it'll do all that deployment, managing all the servers, and it'll do a lot of reporting for us as well. So earlier on, when someone said to me, how many journals have we got in Janeway? It's really difficult to tell you that because we've got so many installs. There's 38 of them. You have to log on to each one and count the number. So the replicator can take care of that by having a beacon system where it can contact the various installs and ask, how many journals have you got? How many articles have you got? And that will be optional. The journals can, you know, the presses can disable it. It allows us to collect that information, and we can easily use it as well. Yes, and lastly, we're going to be upgrading to Django 4.2 LTS. We are not getting left behind ever again. We're very lucky that there were a lot of people maintaining Django 1.11, otherwise we would have been in the shit, actually. There are a lot of people patching it, which is great, but we're going to be on 4.2 as soon as we possibly can. We're just waiting for, I think, one or two of our dependencies to sort of update there. Yeah, I can see it, don't worry. I can see it. And last thing is governance. This is something we're going to talk about today. We are not setting up the library publishing board today, unfortunately. We thought we could do it, but it's really, it became, I didn't want to continue the benevolent dictatorship, basically. I didn't want to stand up in front of you all and say, this is how the library publishing board is going to work. So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about setting up a working group. And that working group will work with the core team to decide what the Janeway or the Publishing Technologies Board is going to do, what their powers will be, how long they will sit for, how they are elected. So we're going to set up a working group today. I'm going to put some slides up. We're going to have a discussion amongst ourselves. Hopefully we'll have a discussion. Basically to give our stakeholders more control. And he's holding up this sheet again, so I'm going to finish up there. Thanks very much for listening to me ramble. It's really exciting to have you all here. About a year ago, I sort of mentioned, let's have a conference, and here we are. Thanks to Catherine, who followed up on that. I wish she hadn't. So thank you all for coming, is the end of that.
Try and not question everything.
Yeah, question. Yeah. Oh, sorry, can I have that
Do you want to do them now?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Thanks. I'll just hold it so we can.
Right, so we have two questions from in the room as well as online. Both of them about the Library of Congress from Chad, who's actually here, person, Chad Nelson at CBL. Is the Library of Congress required structure? Just more about the Library of Congress required structure.
Yeah, they have a weird sort of folder structure that you need, and the folders have to have certain names, and it differs depending on how your integration is set up. So basically, you can ask the Library of Congress what format they want you to send them in, and you can go into Janeway and you can say, put your Library of Congress number in, and then you can put in whether you want volume and issue numbers in your zip files, and Janeway does all the generation around that, and then sends them off via FTP up to the Library of Congress. I think they changed to SFTP recently, so there might be a little rejigging we need to do there, but the Janeway FTP package supports SFTP already, so we should just be able to tweak it and send it over. I think, have we used it at Michigan yet?
We are, or we're about to.
Yeah.
Even if ask for, it's funny is the demand.
Yeah. These are the ones we want. Yeah.
We don't want all
Yeah, we can have a chat about setting that up at your end, Chad, at some point as well.
Right, so the other one was from Christine Baker at ULB. Hoping that whatever you have developed for LOC will help with our submissions.
It possibly could. We can see what sort of structure they require as well. And we can, how do they take, do you know how they require their files to be submitted? Is it? That'll be fun. We can look at building a transporter for that as well. Let's have a chat about it. That'd be cool.
That's all for one on.
Cool. Anyone in the room want to ask a question? Please don't. I'm only joking. No. Okay.